Søren Kierkegaard was considered one of the greatest existentialists, philosophers ever to live. He shared once a reflection about birds. There's a kind of understanding, he said, between tame geese and wild geese. When a flock of wild geese is heard overhead, tame geese are instantly aware of it. And they beat their wings and they cry out and they fly awkwardly along the ground. And then it's over. But once, Kierkegaard wrote, a wild goose migrating southward decided it would try to win over the tame geese so that they would join in the flight and be saved from the wretched mediocrity of a life spent waddling around on the earth. In a sense, Christianity employs a very similar process to what the wild goose did. Christianity teaches conversion. Christianity teaches what we can become in life if we only give ourselves over to God. If we only trust, to do our best to trust, and to trust that God, the one who is love itself, that love is ever calling us upwards and outwards. You see, Christianity abhors mediocrity. Christianity abhors mediocrity. Always has, always will. It urges us to courage to be about much more in our lives than just the beating of our wings and the crying out and the flying awkwardly along the ground. Who are the wild geese among us? Who are the women and men who call us to transformation? Certainly this entire book is calling us higher. It's calling us to transformation. And especially those who take this book seriously, those who live this book sincerely and radically in this world, with no concern about what others think about them, how others might judge them for taking this book seriously, no matter how harshly they're treated for their radical, otherworldly life. Those women and men who are hated for their wildness, who are judged for the radical choices they make to live out loud and live fully, who are hated for their freedom. They are our prophets. In this next month of the church's life, the scriptures are full of them, full of prophets. Ezekiel, Amos, Jeremiah, Elisha, along with Paul, and of course Jesus. Each of them flying at a different level through life than the rest of us fly. They are the prophets of our lives as well. Those prophets have a lot to say to us about how we can get from this awkward, floundering life we tend to live to this level of life. Not because they're better than us, not because they're more gifted than us in ways we are not, but because they've remained wild, unattached, unencumbered, free, just free. And by their bold life and by their bold words, they made such a honking that we would be hard-pressed to ignore them, though we try. We certainly try. Their inspired word, their honking, became for them in their age what they can still be for us in ours. A catalyst, then and now, for those dared to hear and those who dare to heed what they still have to say to us. They're not like the devout among us. Oh, those folks that just have their head down all the time. You can barely see their face. They're so pious, it's almost like they would rather pray than live. There's more and more of them now. It's like this new movement in the church almost, where everybody has to look devout and pious, or they're suspect. Suspect for being too liberal or too unorthodox. I wonder if anybody accused those folks like Ezekiel, Amos, Jeremiah, Elisha, Paul, or Jesus of those same things. You know they did. Those exact same things. Those folks live with a wildness that I'm afraid that many of us have lost. Perhaps we cradle believers especially. Perhaps we've lost some of that wildness to still have something today to say that there's something in our lives that still honks and gets people's attention, that there's something more to life than the way we tend to be living. This goes out of its way to keep people from settling, to actually rock the boat instead of spending our life not rocking the boat. And we've gotten so good at not challenging each other in the name of too many other things. You see, prophets, people who fly up here, they refuse to settle. They refuse to live a comfortable life. And they want us to live up there with them in the rarefied air of freedom. They want us to use those wings we were given, those wings we have been given, wings like our minds to ask questions, even if there's no answers to those questions, and even if the questions are unsettling to us. They invite us to use not just our minds, but our bodies to embrace human beings, our bodies to get out there and work to make this earth a more beautiful place, our bodies to serve other human beings. Our hearts, they're saying, you got this great big heart. You have this amazing capacity to give and receive love. When was the last time you stretched your heart to give to the point of living with a broken heart? We do a lot to make sure it never gets broken. And so we live such a protected, safe, boring life. You see, they know, those who soar here. They know in their bones, they know it. They know the beauty and power and freedom. The beauty and the power and the freedom of living here instead of here. As our nation celebrates its 239th anniversary of its independence this very weekend, think of those who chose to fly up here in their day that founded this nation, who used those wings they were born with and bid the whole world to fly up there with them in this new imagination, this new dream that created so much of what we enjoy today. They bid the whole world hear that honking and look up and see we can do this. We can do this. To live with a new understanding of what it means to be free in practice. Free. People who fly at this level, they're not flying in a different direction than us. They're going the same way we want to go, but they're flying in a whole different zone than we tend to even think about flying in, with a whole different view in air that is rarefied. It takes a certain wildness to do that. And because it's wild, it's going to look sometimes like forgiveness. The one thing somebody said one time that's never been tried in the world that could turn so many things around is if we dared to forgive, if we dared to admit our mistakes and ask for forgiveness, and if we dared to forgive, this world would become instantly from here to here. Our lives would move from here to here. There's a wildness to living with forgiveness, you know. Jesus demonstrated that. The prophets preached it. It is wild to live in this world with a non-violent love, a love that's not violent in action or in words. A non-violent love. It is wild. Wild to not do things that keep people away from me who disagree with me, but work day in and day out to hold the ends of this nation together, to hold the ends of this church together. There's a wildness to a human being that takes the long road of the middle to keep people talking to each other instead of fighting each other and squaring off against each other all the time. Who put up walls just so they don't have to be afraid. There's a wildness, you know, a wildness in those folks who risk the wrath of others knowing full well that they could be wrong, and they may be hated for what they choose to do or how they choose to live or what they choose to believe in. And I, for one, I have to tell you, feel like the wild geese among us in this nation, in this church, are calling me out of my too tame flight path for too long. The flight path of now to the flight path of those who join Jesus as the lead in this amazing formation through the world. You know, something turned in that synagogue that morning. Something turned in the story you just heard from Jesus. He walked into the synagogue he grew up with, and he was just so accepted and so appreciated at first, it seemed, and then all of a sudden, something turned, something changed. That congregation knew him well. It was his hometown. But all of a sudden, he had to start flying solo because they kicked him out of his temple. He took a new level of life that day, radically different from so many of the rest, what so many had begun to settle for. And he was calling them to join him up there. To join him up there, but they hated him for that. Because he was inviting them to join him up there in a way that would threaten their secure, comfortable, safe life that they had chosen for themselves. But I have to say, once he took wing, there's no stopping him. My friends, to live that wild, untamed, free space with the wild geese, we are called to fly there, you and I. We are called to be those prophets now. We are called to do some honking, to do some living, and to speaking with a boldness that perhaps we have set aside for ourselves because of our desire for comfort and security and safety. We're called to live up there not because we're better than they are, but because we want them to know what we've come to know, what we've come to know up here. truth is, there's got to be something about in our lives, there's got to be something in our lives that makes the world look up. And I'm so afraid there's nothing anymore in our lives that makes the world look up. It makes the world look up and wonder what they might be missing. And every once in a while, we got to look up, because there might be something we are missing still. To be alive, to be feeling free. I promise you, this will be one wild goose chase.